What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. In this more special edition video, we're going to do something special. In this video, we're going to rank the top 50 butterfly knife tricks by difficulty. Let's get started. Now before we get into the tricks, let's talk about the rankings. So there's three categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So a beginner would represent with the letter B, intermediate I, and A for advanced. So a beginner 1 would be the easiest in the beginner category, and a beginner 5 would be the hardest in the beginner category, and so on and so forth. Now let's get into the rankings. Now the first trick we're going to talk about is what I like to call the basic open, and it looks like this. This is literally it. You flick your wrist up into the open position. This is so easy, you can basically teach any beginner butterfly knifer this trick in a second. The next trick is also a B1. It's called the basic aerial. It's a really easy trick, and I can pretty much teach any non-butterfly knifer this trick, because they just need to throw it and try to catch it on the same handle. So it's pretty easy. Now the final trick in the category of beginner 1 is what everyone sees as the first Balisong trick, the double rollout. It's what's always in the movies with the people's off little arm movement where they go back and forth so far. But yeah, the double rollout looks like this, and is probably the first way anyone should learn how to open a butterfly knife. Now moving on to the beginner 2 category, the next trick that I like to call the pinch parabolic. This is what it looks like. That's literally all it is. You hold the butterfly knife like this, and you pinch it, and it opens like a parabolic way. It's a really flashy trick that is actually extremely easy once you try it. So that's a beginner 2. The next beginner 2 is leveling up the basic aerial into the ice pick aerial. It's where instead of catching it on the same handle, you catch it one handle sooner and then catch it in a stabbing position. But yeah, it's definitely harder than the basic aerial, so I put it at a B2. And for the final trick in the B2 category, it's the thumb rollover. The main trick that butterfly knifers use, the thumb rollover. You hold it like this, and you roll it over your thumb. It does require somewhat precise timing, but I have been able to teach non-butterfly knifers this trick fairly easily. That's why it's the final trick in the B2 category. Now the first trick in the B3 category is called the slap transfer. That's what it looks like, and I think it's a fairly easy trick, but it is kind of a step up from the thumb rollover, so I graded it 1 level higher. Right smack down in the middle of the B3 category has got to be the helix aerial. It looks like that, and it is a lot harder than the other 2 aerials that I just said, so that's why it's harder, but it's still a beginner aerial. It's just weird to throw the aerial sideways and catch it. Now for the final trick in the B3 category, it has got to be the chaplain. Now the chaplain is a little bit harder of a trick, considering it's an infinite motion trick, but I do think that once you get the hang of it, it is a relatively easy trick. Now, I have been able to teach some non-butterfly knife flippers this trick, so I would say that it's lower than some people might say it is, because once you get it down, it's really not that hard, and you just need to think about it in the right way. Because I had trouble with this trick. I actually learned the behind the 8 ball first, but yeah, in retrospect, I think thinking about it in a different way would help me learn it a lot faster. Speaking of the behind the 8 ball, it's the first trick in the B4 category. The behind the 8 ball is really any beginner's first good butterfly knife trick. It looks somewhat like this. That's literally all it is. It's like 1-0 gravity chaplain caught into a thumb chaplain and transferred into a thumb rollover. It's a somewhat simple trick, but it looks really flashy, so it's really a beginner's first good trick. That's why I have it as a B4. Now, you may be surprised with this next rating, but I have the basic fan as a B4. Now, some people say the basic fan is like extremely easy, it's everyone's first trick, but I feel like fanning in general has been harder for me, and other people agree that the basic fan should be ranked a little bit higher, because I feel like compared to the chaplain behind the 8 ball and the basic aerial, it's such a weird motion that isn't as intuitive, so that's why I gave it a B4. Moving on to our final ranking in the beginner category, the first B5 ranked trick we have is the backhand aerial, which looks like that. It's similar to a normal aerial, you just kind of throw it from this position and behind your hand. So just because of that weird motion, it took me a while to figure this out. But once you figure it out, I think it's still definitely a beginner move, but I have it as a B5. Now the next B5 we have has got to be the Helix, which looks like that, and you can kind of loop it onto infinity. It's definitely a step up from the normal behind the 8-ball, but I'd say that it's still a beginner move. So Helix is B5. Now for the final trick in the B5 category has got to be the reverse fan. So similar to the normal fan, you just kind of reverse it, but it's still kind of a weird motion. So I think it's a step up from the normal fan. Now we're moving on to the intermediate category of tricks. These tricks will involve a lot more dexterity and a lot more harder time to figure it out. So for the first trick in the intermediate category, I have an I1 as the full twirl, which looks like this. And it's definitely an intermediate trick because it's quite a step up between the beginner tricks I listed, because it involves a lot more finger dexterity because you use your ring finger, and it's just a hard move to figure out. But yes, the full twirl is I1. The next I1 we have is the zero gravity chaplain, aka the 0G chaplain. This is a chaplain that instead of doing it like this, you instead do it without any gravity. So it's not above your hand, it's below it. But I'd say that's an I1, although some people think it's a fairly advanced trick. You just have to think about it in a different way, similar to the normal chaplain. The next intermediate trick is the index rollover, aka the blender. It's a harder trick than some of the beginner tricks because it utilizes your index finger, but similar to the thumb rollover, it's kind of the same momentum, just instead on your index finger. So that's why it's an I1. Now our first trick in the I2 category is the extended twirl. The reason this is harder than the full twirl is that you come back down all the way down to your pinky and your ring finger. So utilizing those smaller fingers that aren't as strong as your main fingers is a lot harder. So that's why this trick is an I2. Now the next I2 trick has got to be the backhand fan. Now the backhand fan is similar to the normal fan. You just kind of hold it same in the position for the backhand aerial, and you just do a fan. The backhand fan is kind of hard to think about at first, but once you watch a slow-mo video of it or something, then if you know the normal fan and the reverse fan, it's a lot easier to figure out. That's why it's I2. The next trick in the I2 category is the overhand scissor, which looks like this. You can make it an infinite motion trick, but the overhand scissor is a lot easier than the normal scissor, which will come up somewhat later soon. Now that we've talked about the overhand scissor, let's talk about the normal scissor. It looks like this, and it is harder than the overhand scissor, but since they're both similar motions, I'd say they're sort of the same difficulty, with the normal scissor being a little bit harder. But yeah, the scissor, you just throw it and catch it right near the pivots and kind of throw a chaplain or a full twirl immediately. But yeah, both of those are probably I2s. The next intermediate level 2 trick has got to be the choker fan, which looks like this. It's similar to the normal fan and the reverse fan, but just instead of doing it above your hand, you do it below your hand. And instead of just doing it like this, which looks weird, you get it with your first 3 fingers and have it go between your fingers like this. And then when you're done, you can normally bring it down and get your thumb there into a backhand fan. So the choker fan is an intermediate 2. This next trick, also an I2, is called the suicide drop. And similar to the pinch parabolic, but instead of holding it like this, you hold it like this, and using your index finger, throw it up and catch it like a parabolic. You can catch it like that, or catch it like that, either way, but suicide drop is the intermediate 2. The next intermediate 2 trick is called the Jacob's ladder, which after a pinky catch, I normally do it, and it just kind of goes between your fingers like this, and it looks really weird, and I almost didn't count it as a trick, but starting here, you just kind of bring it between your fingers, and that's really all you do. So, may not be a trick, but I give it intermediate 2 because it's kind of easy once you get the hang of it, and it's a lot easier than other ladders that are coming up soon. This next trick, which just I was talking about with the Jacob ladder, is the pinky catch, where you throw it and catch it with your pinky. And then I just go straight into a Jacob's ladder. So, pinky catch is a step up from the Jacob's ladder and the other tricks like the scissor. So I would give that an I3. So that's the first trick in our I3 category. Another trick in the intermediate 3 category is called the blade grab, which this is probably the easiest way to do the blade grab. You do it behind the 8-ball and then grab the blade. And then you can do whatever you want once you have the blade. But I say that's an intermediate 3 category because it's just a behind the 8-ball with something extra. But blade grabs is like a whole nother topic that I can really suck at, so those are definitely up in a higher category. Our next trick in the I3 category has got to be the cherry picker, which looks like that. The cherry picker is a really fun trick, and it's kind of like doing a helix with your middle finger and then catching it with your index finger and transitioning into an index rollover. But that's it. Cherry picker is definitely an I3. Our next trick is kind of the intermediate flipper's first really flashy trick. It's called the aerial to reverse chaplain. That's what it looks like, and you just throw an aerial with the bite handle side here, and you catch it with the chaplain right here, and you just go straight into a reverse chaplain. But a reverse chaplain is kind of also at the same level, so learn both those at the same time, and you got the aerial to reverse chaplain. Continuing with some more higher end intermediate 3 tricks, next is the ladder to aerial, which you could do it that way, or the easiest way is doing it on this side of the handle and laddering into a half rotation aerial. But this trick is probably more upper end I3, but it's not necessarily an I4 because there's a lot harder ladder aerials in that category. The next trick in the I3 category is classified as a power aerial, but it's basically just a double basic aerial or an ice pick aerial. You just catch it like this. But yeah, I think power aerials, somewhat of an I3, but these two are probably the easiest power aerials, but some of them can be harder and maybe at higher difficulty. Now the first trick in the I4 category is the palm fan, which I am not good at, but from what people say, it is a really easy trick, but I can somewhat do it. It looks like that, and I'd say it's an I4 because it's probably one of the harder fans that you can do. So palm fan is our first I4. Our next I4 is the Murnak ladder, which looks like this. You just do a ladder and stop it with your thumb, and then go into the rest of the combo. The Murnak ladder is kind of like, I'd say, the second ladder you should learn, because the ladder to aerial is a lot easier. But the Murnak ladder is an I4 because you're starting to get into more full like dexterity tricks where you utilize your pinky. The next I4 is surprisingly the flex catch, which if you don't know what the flex catch is, I have a video of it on my channel on how to do it. The flex catch looks like this. You throw the aerial and you catch it right here, and you kind of flex into it. But that's the flex catch. It's a lot easier than it looks, so I'll give it an I4 because it is starting to approach the higher difficulty. For the next trick in the I4 category is probably the flashy twirl. It may be called the kiss goodbye, I'm not sure. They both look very similar, but it's kind of just like an extended twirl, but instead of doing it on that side of the handle, you instead do it on the other side. It looks like this. That's what the trick looks like. I'd say it's probably intermediate 4 because it's not that hard once you get the hang of it. It's just hard because you utilize your pinky down in the lower parts of the trick. Entering the I5 category, the hardest category in the intermediate zone is, I would say, the parabolic, which looks like that. The parabolic is kind of like a reverse fan. Just as you reverse fan, you kind of throw the Balisong up. So fan and throw, and then you can catch it in an ice pick grip. That's what it looks like. Parabolics are really cool to do at the end of the combo. Say, I do this, and I end like this. I can then parabolic and kind of have a cool ending combo that isn't too hard. But I'd give it an I5. It does have really weird timing, and it's kind of a weird way to throw an aerial anyway. My next trick is the helix aerial to 0G chaplain, which looks like that. You basically just throw an helix aerial like this, but instead of catching it with your hand, you throw it and do a 0G chaplain like this, and catch that as you're throwing the helix aerial. So helix aerial on the bite handle side, throw it, catch it with the 0G chaplain. That is definitely an I5 because it involves really weird timing, but similar to the aerial to reverse chaplain, it isn't that bad, so it's still an intermediate trick. Next trick in the I5 category is one of the harder ladder tricks. It's the ladder aerial to reverse chaplain, which looks like that. And you just do a ladder and then throw it into aerial to reverse chaplain. So you're gonna combine 2 tricks, but it should be categorized as 1 trick because it's very different than the Murnak ladder and some other tricks. Definitely an I5 trick. Finally, we get into our first advanced trick. Before I continue, I'd like to say this is my personal opinion. I consider myself a low advanced flipper. So some of these higher end advanced tricks I cannot do very well. So please don't flame me in the comments for not being an advanced flipper. I just don't flip well on camera, but this is my personal rating. If you guys have a different rating, drop it in the comments and maybe I can do a change or something. Let's continue. Now the first advanced trick in A1, I'd say, is probably the Z choker, which looks like this. Now there's lots of ways to end a Z choker. You can end it with a catch, you can end it with like a stall, and then do a bunch of overhand scissors, or a fun way to end a combo, do a Z choker, and end in a catch. But yeah, Z choker is definitely approaching an advanced trick, because the choker fan, whether it's hard enough, you now have to do some locked ladders to get into it. So I don't think I have locked ladders on here, but they are somewhat hard. I'm not good at them because they're just ladders that you go down your whole hand. But I'd say similar to the Z choker, they'd be around advanced 1. But Z choker, locked ladder, into choker fan, and then end it how you want. A1. The next A1 is probably the best trick ever invented. It has to be the short stop, which you do a reverse thumb rollover, and you get your fingers in here, and then you catch it in the starting position. If you don't know how to short stop, I have a video on it, and you should check it out on my channel. That is probably another A1 trick. The next A1 trick is probably the wrist bump. The wrist bump is basically a helix aerial. You just bounce it off your wrist and catch it with your other hand. It looks like this. Now the first trick in the A2 category is sort of a combo. It's called the short and neat. It utilizes the pinky, and this is what it looks like. The next advanced 2 trick, I'd say, is surprisingly the giraffe, which looks like that. It's kind of a scissor and, I guess, chaplain thing combined. The giraffe means you do a bite handle scissor, catch it, throw a rollover, and then go into a ring chaplain. But yeah, I'd say it's an A2 because there are a lot harder advanced tricks than the giraffe. So if you want to get into advanced flipping, you should probably try to do the giraffe because it's probably a more low end one. But that's an A2. The next advanced trick has got to be the tabletop. There are many ways to get into the tabletop, but the easiest way is probably doing a bunch of chatters into the tabletop. This is what it looks like. The tabletop is a really good finisher for a combo, but it's kind of inconsistent, so I don't do it as much. But the tabletop is really flashy, and it's a different style of flipping than what you normally see. The next A2 is probably the reverse shortstop, which looks like this. I knew that Benjamin flips, if you don't know him. He's insanely good at them, and he has a tutorial on them, but he did one where there's multiple ways to do it, like you exit a Z choker in doing it, but I like to do it from a normal rollover, and then you put your fingers here, and then push up like this, and you can catch it like this. So it's like a normal shortstop, but instead of ending in the standing position, you sort of end in the open position. But I'd say they're A2. I'm not really good at them yet because I kind of learned them recently, but from how fast I learned to somewhat do it, it's definitely similar to giraffe level. So I'd give it an A2, but it's harder than normal shortstop. Excuse me for this camera angle, this was filmed afterwards. This next trick that we're talking about is also an A2, and it's called the Van Gogh. So instead of doing a face reveal to do it, I'm just going to show you this clip right here. Finally, getting into the A3 category, it's time to talk about chatters. Now, funnily enough, I'm not going to put the normal chatter easier because I think the inverse chatter is the easier one. The inverse chatter, it looks like this, and you kind of throw chatters on the this side of the handle instead of this side, but it's definitely easier, I think, because it's a more familiar motion similar to the shortstop. But yeah, I'd give inverse chatters an A3. Now, directly after the inverse chatter is the normal chatter, which looks like this. So instead of doing the inverse chatter on this side of the handle, you do it on this side, and you just do a chatter. That's what it's called, and it's kind of like a chaplain, thumb chaplain with some ladder stuff combined. But yeah, chatters are fun, definitely a step up from the giraffe and things, so I'd give them an A3. Finally, we reach the A4 category, where the first trick we have is a double scissor. I am not good at double scissors, but I know that once you get good at them, they're actually consistent, but I do have a tutorial on them, so I'd say like I get them 60% of the time. But yeah, double scissors are an A4. Here's what the trick looks like. The reason double scissors are hard is it's kind of like you catch a nurse scissor, and in that time you're kind of like just losing like the momentum. You have to throw another one. So the hardest part is keeping the momentum up. Double scissors are definitely an A4. The next A4 is the infinity ladder. I am not good at infinity ladders, but I can do them somewhat consistently. It looks like this, but it's like a ladder like this, but you kind of just use these fingers and you don't use your pinky. But the infinity ladder, you use your thumb to keep the momentum going. For the infinity ladder, you can do it on this side also. It's just, I think it's a little bit harder, but I like doing them on this side more, the side where the blade isn't there, because then I can throw a thumb roll over. Infinity ladders, probably an A4. Now for the A5 category, most of the tricks in here I can't do, so I'm just gonna try my best and use the best wisdom I can, but these ones are ranked high for me. May need to make an expert tier for them, but if you can do them, love to send me a tutorial so I can get better at them. So the first trick in the A5 category is the double scissor giraffe. You do a bite handle double scissor into a giraffe, and I'm gonna try to do one, but it looks like this. That looks so bad. So the next A5 trick is called the cat, which stands for Chaplain Aerial Transfer, which you basically do, I like to do middle finger to index, you do a chaplain, and you over rotate it and throw it to your index finger. I'm gonna try to do one, so here's me failing at doing one. There, that looked awful, but now for the final trick in the A5 category, similar to the cat, it's literally the reverse cat. So instead of doing a normal chaplain, then throwing it, you do a reverse chaplain and then throw it. I get nowhere close to it, so I'm not even gonna try. I can't do a reverse cat, but it looks like a normal cat, but you do reverse chaplain instead. Well, that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching, and I hope you would like to subscribe, leave a comment on your rankings and your opinion, and we're so close to 100 subscribers. I'm at 98 by the making of this video, so once I get 100 subscribers, I'll do a special video, so subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.